Welcome, Yogesh. I am super excited to have you on. Those of you tuning in, this is the Meet Your Species podcast where we meet interesting new people and just get to know them, get some context. Who are they? Why do they think the way they think? All that kind of stuff. So, yeah, this is Yogesh. He's a wonderful person I met during the Hatha Yoga Teacher training when I was at the ashram in India. And he's been on some very interesting adventures since then, so I'm really looking forward to diving in and getting the full scoop. So I think we'll just start it simply. Where are you from? Where do you hail, my friend?
Well, first of all, great to be here, and really excited to sit and share a few minutes of my life with you guys. Well, maybe a few years in a few minutes, but anyway, I come from Tennessee. I was born in Texas. My biological mother passed away when I was 2.5, and then I essentially ended up moving to Tennessee with my father. Lived in North Carolina for 5 years, South Carolina for like 5 years, and then ended up in Tennessee. And so I grew up near the mountains of East Tennessee, and yeah, I from like 8th grade onward, that's where I've been. And I ended up moving near Nashville for my college. And so yeah, I'm a
Mostly Tennessee boy.
Southern man, as they might say. But yeah,
So
that's
Tennessee.
me. Yeah.
Interesting. So what would you say in those earlier years in Tennessee, or even your family back in Texas and all this? What are those early moments that helped really shape, like, I would imagine losing your mother in some aspects would help shape a lot of things in your life. But what are those kind of people or events like that that would have really helped you think the way you think?
So I think when I was growing up, we were not very well to do. My father had a carpentry business for a while, and then it kind of went bankrupt. So we had to kind of, from our nice house and little piece of land that we had, we kind of sold everything and kind of downgraded our lives quite a bit. My father had remarried, and the woman who raised me was kind of had some history of mental illness, and so our relationship was tumultuous, I guess, to put it very simply, and it was quite abusive. I mean, it's not like I don't like to think of it as like a sad story or anything, because I don't know, it made me who I am today. But yeah, growing up, I always kind of was longing for some sense of completeness and love in my life, because in the family situation, it wasn't really there. My dad was like my best friend, but then I had this contrasting figure in my life that was like sometimes would bring me in close and sometimes would push me away. And so I feel that I kind of unknowingly sought stability and love and joy, and because I never could really grasp it in my home. So we were not religious like so much. Like we went to church from time to time, but I was always like very spiritual kind of kid. Like I never like I never accepted the idea that like if you weren't a Christian you were going to hell or something like that. I remember just like being like completely adverse to those kinds of ideas, even from a very young age. And I questioned so much, in that area. And then my father, actually, who, like I said, we were very close when I was 17, or when I was 14, he discovered that he had like renal cancer. So he had a kidney removed, and then we thought that, okay, everything is fine now. And then a couple years later, when I was 17 or 16 or 17 or so, some spots showed up in his lungs and everything. So he ended up passing away when I was 17.
Mm.
Essentially, I kind of was started to get into drinking and drugs, and basically I left my home when I was 18, and that was October of my senior year. So I kind of had, from where my biological mother had passed away, I had some money, say, like kind of in the background that was building up over time. And then I kind of received that money right after my father passed away. And then my mother, the person who raised me, kind of, we just didn't have a good relationship. So I ended up, kind of like moving into my best friend's house, or actually I got an apartment on my own for a while, and then I had a lot of money and a lot of pain. So at that time it was very formative for me, because like I kind of got really depressed because I had everything I wanted, but it seemed like nothing could um, like fill that void in me, and as much money as I spent, and the more fun I had, I just watched myself deteriorate. And there were mornings when like I just didn't want to get out of bed, and I was, just a senior in high school. So many other things happened. I got kicked out of high school, and lots of kind of unwholesome events transpired. But I I had like kind of a small awakening at that point, where when I looked around myself and I was just surrounded by like horrible, like just ugly, kind of gross situations, I just looked around and was like, this is not how I want to live my life. And as a young man, I was always into comic books and superheroes and all kinds of, I wanted to be a sportsman, and I wanted to be an athlete, and I wanted to be a martial artist. None of those opportunities ever came into my life. But once I was out on my own, then I kind of said, you know what? I want to make a change. So I started exercising, working out. My best friend, um, who later became like, a professional power lifter, or not Olympic weightlifter, sorry. He and I kind of like started down that path together. And like by the time I was 21, um, I had kind of started along the road to um, where I am now, which is very much oriented towards uh, improving myself on a daily basis and benefiting from a lot of work that I did, I think, at that time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of what I wouldn't say inspired me, but I just got so desperate that I decided like I've just got to do something. And I remember, well, I don't want to go into all those things. It's a little depressing, but there were times whenever I really felt that like, okay, it's either get better or just why even be alive, kind of. And so I kind of made that decision, and yeah.
Mm. So, what was your, like, how would you describe your dad as a person?
Well, he was a very loving person, and not a very dominant kind of. He was like very mild, and simple. he was a jack of all trades. In fact, his name was Jack. And he could do almost anything. You know, he could fix a car, he could build a house, he could do so many amazing things. And you know, but the thing was, the only problem was that at that time, that generation, they just didn't have a sense for health and you know, eating good food, or you know, it was like there was just at least in that, I don't know, whatever kind of cultural context we existed in at that time, and it just wasn't really like at the forefront of people's thought, you know. So yeah, he was a wonderful person, but I would say that he was maybe like weak in a way, you know, because he never he never stood up for me, you know, against the force of you know, the negative influences in the home. And I don't know if that was because he maybe didn't understand fully how to, you know, protect a child or whatever. But yeah, he was a wonderful person, but if I had to say anything negative about him, I would say that yeah, he was afraid to, maybe he didn't want to give up the good things he had, even though there were negatives that came along with it. But when I look back in retrospect, I'd say that the bad outweighed the good, unfortunately. So,
Do you have a favorite memory with him?
yeah, you know, he played guitar, you know, so from time to time he would teach me how to play guitar. There was a period of time where my mother, who was kind of stepmother, I guess you would call, she left to go take care of her parents for a while, and um, we had like a period where it was like maybe 2 months, and the kind of love and like freedom that I experienced at that time, you know, like I remember he gave me $20 one time or something like that, or he gave me $5, you know, and I knew that we were poor, you know, so I remember just I remember feeling so bad that, you know, because I didn't want to take that from him, but it was like I didn't have fear to be in my own home. I didn't have fear to just be, you know, and it was like those couple of months where we just, I don't know, ate nachos and watched TV together. You know, we ate nachos like 3 times a week, you know, or whatever, because we could, you know, and like we didn't have to answer to anybody. And, uh, but it was like a beautiful time that we experienced together where we didn't have to be in fear, you know. And so those were good times, you know. I went skating. I went to friend's house. I had a friend spend the night, which is like didn't happen, you know. So I just remember that I was like maybe 12 or something like that, and just going into middle school, and yeah, it was a beautiful time.
Mm. It's nice. Middle school can be like some people's like worst period of time in childhood. So
Yeah,
it's nice to
yeah.
have something sweet in that. For your biological mother, I know you're quite young, but maybe through stories that were told, is there like how would you describe her as a person?
Well, I think, gosh, I really tried I tried to like um, sequester information about her, you know, but it seemed like nobody had like they couldn't really describe her other than saying she was very loving and very kind and stuff like that, you know. So I never really got a feel for who she was, you know. But if I had to understand who she might have been, then I would have to kind of maybe look back at my grandmother on my mother's side. So
We spent time with her, right?
yeah, she was like the closest person in my life. She was like, I think that person other than my father that kind of showed me unconditional love, but was willing to fight for me. And there were instances where there was like friction between her and my stepmother. There was even a moment where she thought to just run away with me, and in fact, I felt that I was lucky that I had those 1 or 2 months in Texas with her every year because, my parents medicated me when I was 6 years old. They took me to a psychologist and I was like ADHD, right? So then they started feeding me Ritalin. And like, I can tell you that in my house, like every time I even laughed, it was like, go take your medicine, so it was like really disturbing, and I knew what it did to me. I would feel dull, and I would not feel hungry. I would feel a little sick to eat, sometimes in the morning after taking the medicine. And so when I went to my grandmother's house, she was like, forget that stuff, and I would gain like 10, 15 pounds. I would be like, just a ball of energy. But you know what? That's what children are, and so if I had to think about and understand my mother, I would say that probably, I don't know how much it would translate because I think my grandma was probably a different grandma than she was a mother,
Yeah, of course.
Because maybe she learned from all those mistakes and then tried to like shower me with more love and caring and stuff. So, but I think they had a nice relationship, and my grandma was like one of these people that like just decided to be joyful, all the time. Like she just was kind of a simple person in that she didn't like to get too deep into thinking about like, what's right and wrong in the world, but like whatever she could do that was best and was good, and um, what she could do as like a good Christian woman, as she would say, that's what she did. And she would honestly like sometimes just ask, why me? Why am I so blessed? Even after my mother passed away, which was like so hard for her. And even after her husband passed away, which was fairly early, she was only like in her 60s. So like they still would have had 20 more years together. She would say, why me? Why am I so blessed to be this joyful and happy? And so she was like that. So I think probably my mother was like a cool person and but she just enjoyed a little too much, and that was why she ended up dying. She died in a drunk driving accident. Yeah. So yeah. But I wish I could know, but nobody's around anymore to tell me, But at the same time, like it's not something that I think too much about, But yeah, I do wonder, like what reflection might be in me or something like that, sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched a documentary and I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's like Twinsies or I can't remember, but there was two girls who were both Asian and they were both adopted. And one of them was in California and she made like a YouTube video or something. This is years ago. And another one was in France and she's looking at it and she's like identical to me, like visually.
Yeah.
It's like freaky. So she just kind of reached out on Facebook, like, I think you're my twin. And it turned out they were. So long story short, they ended up going to, I think it was Korea, where they were adopted from. And they couldn't track down their like birth mother, but they tracked down the two women who independently took care of each of them respectively. So when you met them, even though it was only like a few months, I think, that they had them before it went under the next whatever step in the adoption process, you met one woman who took care of the girl who ended up in California, and that girl's very like outgoing and bubbly and like this, and this woman also is so close.
Yeah.
And then similarly, the other one, the girl who was in France, I think, she was much more reserved, and also that woman who was taking care of her was the same. So you can just see the impact at like such a young age of how the people around you are. And I can only imagine that it would be the same since you had a good 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I often wrestle with whatever it is that I picked up from Because also that reflects in me, and I can see that, especially when I started on the path of yoga, because then the whole thing was like, I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to just switch, all of a sudden to like, from normal, happy, joyful to like just all of a sudden like feeling like some demon lives inside of me or something, and so it kind of taught me a lesson, that like that, you know, I, although it wasn't genetic, but still there was so much influence, but I think ultimately, like now, when I look at my grandmother and how she was, I would say that something prevailed in me from that, more because I think it was like maybe fighting to get out, and then I just had to find a way to like free it, in a way.
So with your grandmother, you said that she was one of the people that you felt like really kind of was in your corner, right? Fighting for you. Is there any example of like something you can share that would like kind of paint that picture of how that moment that like, wow, I really love you, grandma, kind of thing?
Well,
It's okay if you don't want to share.
no, it's okay. You know, it was the feeling I got every time that I left, like at the airport, about to just fly off.
Or to go back to Tennessee.
Yeah, that's when it all came down, like it just would hit us, and we would both just cry, man, both of us, and we were just so close, that like we would, you know, I mean, she spoiled the hell out of me, honestly, and I just took and took, like, and but there was an instance where, like, when she told me that when she found out that my mother passed away and that I was going to go live with my father, she said, I really considered just running away with you, and so um, from that moment, like I mean, I just knew that I knew that she really did consider that, and I almost wish she would have, because life would have been much, much different, but maybe if I hadn't had to go through all those things and to have the taste of two different worlds, maybe I wouldn't have become who I am today. But yeah, but I can tell you, I, yeah, yeah. So I think that's it, man. There was just something ever present that I really knew that she would do anything for me and anything I asked, and it was almost unfair to ask, because I knew that it was always there, and maybe you take those people for granted sometimes. I don't think I took her for granted like most people have done. I've seen, where they just really don't know what they have. I always like express my love, but yeah, like it was always ever present, our relationship and the power of our love and stuff between each other. So
Mm. Yeah. And I forget, do you have any siblings?
no.
Okay. And what about other people, teachers, or like friends, or like any kind of mentor in that early age, like 18 or younger?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I had an uncle who was actually funnily, I don't know if that's a word, but
It is today.
so he was my stepmother's brother,
Mm.
and I think there was like a cycle of abuse that went on in their family from her mother, and that's why she ended up the way she was. And he was actually gay, and he was married for many years, and he was, Uncle Dan, and even now it's been so long since he was married, actually, then I don't remember his wife's name, but they separated as friends once it kind of, became evident that like he was, that he wanted to go down a different path. And so he was an art collector, and he was also like a Buddhist, like a Christian Buddhist kind of person, where they kind of, I guess take whatever is relevant for them or whatever. But
Sounds pretty American.
yeah, yeah. But he would always visit New Mexico. That's one of the places where he felt like so much power and so much like spiritual, uh, energy, that kind of like pervaded the place. And so that's where he would go for his like to retreat, and to like get a peace of mind and all that kind of stuff. And so he would visit the reservations, and he would send me stories, and like, these traditional storytellers and stuff, like on tape, cassette tape at that time, and I would listen to him again and again and again. And the artwork was like the tribal art, it was like patterns, and it was like, earthy. And then, he sent me a book uh, when I was like maybe 18 or so. And I'm not sure exactly when, but it was called the Way of the Warrior, or the Fearless Warrior, or something like that. But it was written by a Tibetan Buddhist monk, and I think master. I'm not sure, but it just kind of made the distinction between courage and fearlessness, and somehow that stuck with me. And um and so I don't know, he definitely influenced my life in terms of art, and um in terms of acceptance. I never found myself at odds with people's lifestyle. There was one point in college whenever, like, one of the most beautiful times of my life was, I was in an art collective with a few friends, and a lot of them were like either, they were all like LGBTQ or whatever, like some of them were transgender, some of them were, lesbian couple, and then my, yeah, so it was, and they were so accepting, and like I just kind of blended right in, and I was just like, like you said, maybe I guess white bread or something like that, like, and so that understanding, and I have to credit that to my stepmother as well, because there were certain ideologies that, she always fell on the correct side of on the beautiful side of a lot of issues. And like, she had that compassionate understanding. It was just knowledge of the self that she didn't have, so she lashed out and did so many things. But yeah, I was really lucky he came into my life, because he exposed me to a lot of really interesting things that maybe I would otherwise never have experienced. mm.
So, you said you moved out at around 18, right?
Yeah.
So that itself must have been a pivotal point, I would imagine.
Well, I was in the midst of like little depression, and my family had all kind of converged, because like my father was the youngest, and he was like the one that kind of everybody didn't take issue with. So everybody else had problems, and he was the one that kind of brought everybody together. So in that sense, once he was gone, then I'm not sure. I was in a troubled place where, like, I mean, I think I got into a drunk driving accident when I was like 17 and totaled my truck and got arrested, and then my whole family was there at that time, and so I kind of was getting a little bit of a bad name in the family because they just, although I had heard so many stories about like all the transgressions and things that they had done when they were young, and but for some reason at that time everybody like just kind of, I wouldn't say shunned me. You know, there was only like a couple people who were like, you know what, if you need something, you can come live with me. You can come, you can do whatever you need. You know what I'm saying? Like there was just like really only one person, and he wasn't even my biological uncle. He was like a brother to the wife of one of my uncles, you know. So yeah, it was like I kind of felt abandoned, you know what I'm saying? Like I really, but like not consciously. You know, like when I said I'm gonna move out, I started spending the night at my buddy's house a lot, and then all of a sudden I said, all right, I'm moving out, and then all of a sudden I come home, my bags are like everything's packed, you know, and it was like October of my senior year, so um, so yeah, I was, you know, I was like just really disturbed, and yeah, you know, it wasn't really until I kind of, you know, I had my apartment for some time, and then that was just completely out of hand, and it was just completely a disgusting situation in terms of I didn't know how to take care of anything. I didn't know how to, yeah, I didn't know how to take care of myself well. So I ended up moving into my best friend's house. And so at that time, that's whenever I understood like a healthy family unit, you know, like they had a good relationship, mother and father, brothers and sisters were there. And so at that point, I kind of like glimpsed like a little bit of sanity and wholesomeness that I had probably only seen on a movie or something like that, or, you know, like I said, at my grandma's house. But, you know, they included me into their family. And yeah, from there, I kind of got the strength and got back on my feet mentally. And then I was kind of, you know, me and my buddy kind of set out on our journey to university after that. And yeah, so.
So you went to, you said university, right?
Yeah.
What did you at that moment feel like you should do? Or did you not know?
Man, it was like we worked for like about a year, and we just hated it so bad. I remember sitting out in front of Titan Stadium in Nashville, like I don't want to serve I don't not you know another thing of nachos to these unhealthy like silly people, you know, and we were just like. I don't want to go to work today. You know, and I just remember like sitting in the car like screaming and just like, I don't know, getting it out, you know, and then like, okay, we ended up going into work. But
take your order.
Yeah. You know, and we were like stocking concession stands at Titan Stadium, and basically we just said, you know what, forget this. This is horrible. We're gonna go and like make, you know, get an education and make some money. So when we first went to school, like for me, it was like really exciting because I always loved academics. And I mean, I'm not the most academic person, like in terms of, you know, I'm not studious as such, like, you know, like I'm not, I would say, not well organized in my study, you know. I'm always studying something, but I'm not like very well kind of like managed to like do all the things I need to do to like achieve like a certificate or something like that, you know. But all the things I loved, I always really, you know, just got so much joy out of learning. And so I started out thinking I was going to be like a big animal vet, you know, because when we were in Nashville working, we would just come home and like watch Animal Planet, you know, and my best friend was always better because he could always name all the facts, you know, like he'd be like, I'd be like, yeah, I think an elephant weighs this many tons. He'd be like, no, they weigh this many tons. And I'd be like, whatever, guy, and
Were you a Crocodile Hunter fan?
not so much. I think at that time Crocodile Hunter was like, I think he had already passed away, and it was like or maybe we just missed him, but I just remember watching a lot of those kind of like David Attenborough style things, So I thought I was going to be a big animal vet, and then I started taking biology. I had a teacher that was really cool. He was actually a mycologist, so he's into fungi. And I was like feeling like so cool, because like to feel intellectual and to feel like I was achieving something, like for me was like really amazing. I mean, we were also like smoking a ton of weed at that time. Like we had like, we kind of gave up alcohol and decided that was evil, and then we started smoking tons of weed, and we were in college. It was my two best friends, one girl and one guy, and so yeah, we enjoyed. I started in biology, and it was a lot of fun. But then once we got to microbiology, I started thinking, I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of where I started out. But then I got into culture, and then I got into martial arts, and then I would thought, I want to be like a James Bond. I want to learn all like 3 languages, and I want to like do martial arts. And my buddy and I, we were into parkour, so we were like tearing that campus up, having an excellent time. I mean, it was really fun time. It was really fun time. But at that time, my best friend was like, he was kind of, I with people that I really care about, there's this thing in me where it's like I don't actually want to like be with them. I want to actually be them. That's how I felt. And like he was big and strong and handsome, and he was quiet. He was like all those things that like, superheroes are in the movies and everything. So, so I didn't really our relationship kind of cooled off like as the years in college kind of went on. And so when that happened, that's when I really kind of was able to break out, because I always kind of looked at him because he came from this nice family. He was like stable. And I was just all a mess, but he still loved me. And we had like, just a super close friendship. It's just like we just basically decided one day, like when we were spending time together in high school, we were like, dude, you're like my best friend. I would do anything for you, and like, let's walk together on this journey for a while, and so we just basically like literally did everything together for like 3-4 years, and lived together and traveled together. And so, but it was actually only after our relationship cooled off, and for various reasons, that I started to discover myself, because I kind of was always like judging myself according to him, and who he was and everything. And so it wasn't until I kind of like broke free a little bit that I started really to enjoy my life at college and stuff like that, to like make friendships, because I was like in this mode where I was like, I shouldn't talk to people. I should be quiet and brooding, and like I should be cool all the time, I should be cool, like man. Mysterious, but I could never help it. I always seemed to like talk to people in class. I always seemed to, like open up, and so once I started to really accept that, and once we weren't like living together and continuously like, in the presence of each other, then I really kind of, came into my own, I think. But yeah, so, which opened up the good and the bad, because I kind of really just went wide open. And like then whatever was there that wasn't so desirable also started to kind of surface, and which ultimately is what kind of led me into into yoga, which it led me first into martial arts because I was seeking some spiritual something in me.
So are you thinking like Kung Fu masters seem to have something like that?
Yeah, well, the story is really lame. I watched The Last Samurai.
Oh, with Tom Cruise?
Yeah, and like, I mean, it's hilarious now to look back and think like Tom Cruise was the last samurai. I mean, it's just insulting probably to the samurai in so many ways. Like out of 1,000-year-old tradition, like Tom Cruise is the last samurai. But anyway, I was so inspired by Japanese culture and their purposefulness and the beauty of their and the simplicity of their aesthetics and stuff that I was just like, I'm gonna become the most hardcore warrior that's ever walked on the face of this planet. And
All right.
and I didn't think it was gonna be that hard. I thought all you had to do was just like set your mind to it, and then that's it. But apparently,
you just got to get kidnapped by a samurai.
Yeah, apparently there's quite a distance to walk. So that's when I kind of got into martial arts, and it kind of gave me some strength because somewhere in me I always felt like I'm not good enough. I didn't have any confidence. I didn't like my body, like I had so many things that were just kind of like pins in my head, all the time, and like would influence the way I interacted with everybody. And so martial arts, like when I was like, I started actually doing something and excelling for the first time in anything, um, because it was jujitsu. Jujitsu, like you don't have to be the strongest guy. If you're smart and you're a little athletic, like you can, it's like playing chess. Like you can really, get good. And so I started to get good, and it gave me a lot of confidence. But yeah, so
Is there something specifically that, like, I only did like just a tiny bit of, I think like a karate class when I was little, and then I started kicking my sisters, and so that took me out right away. Like, now you're done. But is there something you can like articulate about the martial art that gives you that sense of confidence?
well, to be honest with you, I think that the idea that I got from all the movies I watched was actually was like my perceived reality and of the martial arts that I was seeking. It wasn't. I definitely wanted to like figure out how to. I definitely wanted to like be fit and be strong and not be weak. But what I wanted out of the martial arts was like a sense of balance and a sense of focus, powerful focus. And when you watch those martial arts movies, that's what those guys seem like. They seem like, wow. And I'm maybe on some level they are, because any of those guys, you obviously have to train hard, and you obviously have to have something. But where it's coming from, whether it's coming from insecurity or whatever, which was the case for me, it doesn't necessarily always kind of translate into like spiritual growth. It just translates into like, okay, I got more confidence, and it can be dangerous, actually. And so I really wanted the I really wanted to touch that spiritual aspect of, making myself, more mentally tough and more focused and more balanced. But yeah, like,
Did that come eventually?
no. No, it didn't. And, I think probably that's because, a lot of times maybe you need to be taught by the right people, because it's not just, I think that in Japan, for instance, like there was a lot of culture, or in Korea, like the Taekwondo in Korea, or the Jiu-Jitsu or Judo in Japan, like I can't, this is a general statement. I may be making some assumptions, but I would think that, at least the way the class is and the way the people are, there's a lot of their own culture that kind of as is like a part of it, and that's what's the culture itself, and having something to focus on kind of work together to produce whatever it is that we see as the kind of archetype martial artist, or master of martial arts or whatever. But when jiu-jitsu came to the States, like, I don't think a lot of those things carried over. And actually it went down to Brazil first, at least the martial art that I was involved in. And, Brazil is very much, even in certain ways, more loose in certain areas than the US, So if it had been a straight shot, maybe it would have retained a little bit more, because US is a little bit more kind of structured and like organized, but Brazil is like very relaxed and laid back. So they basically got rid of anything that made it inconvenient. I mean, they did, like, in terms of like meditating, or like, really having that sense of bowing down to your master or anything like that. It was just became like, just going through the motions. Like, okay, bow, ready to go. Okay, good training, guys. What's up? Like, and so, no, I didn't find what I was looking for, because, I think that it's not really there as much anymore. And I think you kind of have to find a really special person that can kind of transmit whatever that is, so so yeah.
So you got into martial arts, and you did jiu-jitsu and anything else?
Well, I always wanted to kind of be a little well-rounded, so I trained a little bit of, like, striking, Thai boxing, and then I got into stick, like Filipino stick stuff and everything. I mean, I can't say that I ever like excelled in anything but jiu-jitsu, really, because like I had a knee injury from parkour, and because of that I couldn't kick, and like, so I kind of like just switched into doing just jiu-jitsu mostly, and so like I kind of got good at that, but yeah, I know a little bit about everything, but even to this day I can't really say that like I'm a great martial artist, but I feel that uh, only recently, in recent years, and this was like years after I kind of stopped training, that I started to understand like what self-defense meant, and it's very different from jiu-jitsu and all those things. So
Can you elaborate? Like, what do you mean?
yeah, so, well, if you're on the street, you don't want to just like go onto the ground with somebody, you know what I'm saying? Because there might be other people, and there's lots of situations that could make things a little complicated, So there's a specific kind of jiu-jitsu that is like that's oriented towards self-defense, which can be really useful. In fact, it's been kind of proven that like, okay, this is one of the most like the best for that for self-defense. But the truth is that like a lot of what we learned was like sport jiu-jitsu. So it has certain rules, certain things you can do, certain things you can't do. And so ultimately, yeah, it's just it was a lot of fun, and it's a cool party trick, to be able to, take a big guy down when you're a little guy or something like that. But like ultimately, like, if you think about, somebody can bite you, somebody can punch you in places that or grab you in places that like
Sun don't shine.
yeah, exactly. Like it's dangerous to have that false sense of confidence that like jiu-jitsu is like the answer, because if you're out there and you go into the ground with somebody, two of his buddies come up, start kicking you, and then
That's it.
It's bad. You're in bad shape. So but yeah, I'm only now just kind of like starting to learn a little bit about like what self-defense means, and it's actually in a lot of ways more mental than physical. I found in that you have to think a certain way and be aware in a certain way that then can increase your chance of being safe, keeping yourself safe, keeping your family safe and such. But yeah, but at the time it meant a lot for me, so whatever it was, whether it was like whatever I learned was like super effective or whatever, I got a taste of whatever I wanted, like I could pull off cool moves, I could look like a ninja, so in that sense, like,
especially with the parkour.
yeah, so like that was my vision, I wanted to like put all those things together and be like, like be something that I saw in the movie, which maybe isn't that realistic ultimately. So
And you said this eventually led you to yoga, right?
it did. So because of parkour and because of jiu-jitsu, not so much jiu-jitsu, I got lucky somehow, but I had a lot of injuries, and there was one pretty nasty knee injury that I had, and it just really kind of took everything down a notch. I just kind of went from like being like super strong, like young kid to all of a sudden like could barely walk, and I was on crutches for 6 months, and then I was trying to do some rehab, but I was just like not really a very consistent kind of person, like I just couldn't seem to keep a schedule from rehabilitation exercises. I could just do whatever I could do at that moment, and then like I could never do anything consistently as such. So, so yeah, I started I started actually, because you hear that like yoga might be the answer, and um, for injury and all those kinds of things. So I actually started doing like hot yoga or something, and
Whatever was there.
yeah, whatever was there that I understood as yoga, and yeah, to tell you the truth, even though hot yoga, I'm not a fan these days. I think it seems like really dangerous to me now that I know more about the whole thing. But at that time, it helped me, a little bit. And so,
There's definitely benefits to a sauna.
yeah, so it definitely like I started to feel like I was like improving. I started to feel like the injuries were kind of like starting to go away a little bit, and but what wasn't going away? All the drinking and all the drugs and all the stupid shit that I was doing, all the lashing out and the anger and the getting into really unhealthy relationships, and then like when they didn't like anymore, start going from love to hate automatically, like so life wasn't improving, and I thought that I could like smoke some weed and like meditate with some lo-fi hip hop going or something like that, and like take mushrooms and somehow like transcend, but I just was getting worse and worse, and nothing was really opening up for me, though I was having some cool experiences on psychedelics and stuff like that. Nothing was really like creating a sense of balance, and I think that's what started to unknowingly, I would have never like called myself unbalanced, at that time. Like I would have never said, wow, I've got an issue, um but there was just so much suffering, and it just couldn't be it couldn't be dealt with in any way but like drinking more or whatever. And so I ended up dropping out of college and going down to Texas to live with my grandma for some time. And so at that time I was still training jiu-jitsu, and I found a cool crew, and they were just some good old boys into drinking a few beers. They weren't into like doing psychedelics or smoking weed and stuff like that. And so like things calmed down a little bit for me, and I played guitar. I was into like writing little bit of music here and there. Again, I never finished the song because I just wasn't capable to this day even. But I had even been in Brazil for a while, and to train jiu-jitsu, I did like an exchange program in college and stuff, and
That's cool.
yeah, so I had done a few things, but ultimately things started to really boil up and come out, and so like I ended up getting pretty desperate, and so I stayed with my grandma for a while. I started to get things back on track, and as you might imagine, I thought, okay, I'm good now. I think I can handle this. And so maybe the planets were like, in alignment for a while, and like I was good. And that's when I went back up to Tennessee, and then I became a member of that art collective and started doing a lot of art and music. Um, and then, you know what? I started to kind of see that, I don't know, maybe I was at a point where there was enough balance in me where I could see that like I still don't have control. I would just end up drinking too much still, although it was like on a little bit less of a regular basis, and
Mm-hmm.
I was still getting into like unhealthy relationships and stuff. So basically I just got really desperate, and I said, okay, what can I do? And I typed in I think somewhere along the line I had read that book, Autobiography of a Yogi by
Oh,
Paramahansa Yogananda. Somewhere in the crazy life that I was leading, I happened upon that book, and I saw that, wow, yogis are like superheroes, They can teleport, they can like they can like be in two places at once, like, and as a kid I really was like this. I never stopped believing in superpowers. Never. Like my parents would tell me, you can't fly. You can't. It's impossible, And I was like, listen, you don't know how to fly. So that doesn't mean that like you can't. Somebody hasn't figured it out yet. So that was always in me, I never let that go for some reason. I just always believed that, wow, we can do things that maybe most people can't do, but you have to learn, you have to figure it out, and when I read Autobiography of a Yogi, it was like, wow, if you look deep enough and if you figure out how this thing works, this whatever it is that you call yourself or your body or your mind and all this stuff, like you can do magic basically. And so whenever I finally realized that, like, dude, I'm really messed up, I really got to do something, I kind of I typed in meditation Tennessee, because like I was like,
you're in Tennessee?
yeah, and I didn't want to go to some psychologist because like I was mentioning earlier, they just will medicate you, and I just hated that. Like as a kid, like it just bothered me that I had to like be on medication to be normal, and like I just didn't buy it, and I just thought this is bullcrap.
Mm.
And you know so I decided, let me go and learn some serious meditation. So then I went up to when I typed in meditation Tennessee, Sadhguru's face popped up, and I had seen him on some videos, like just randomly on YouTube or something, and even my philosophy professor had showed me a video one time, and I never knew he taught yoga or anything. I just thought he was like a wise man that like traveled around and talked or something.
Yeah.
I didn't have any background, and yeah. So then I went there. I took a couple of courses, and like the quality was like, whoa, this is like good quality. I could just feel it immediately that like the quality was there after being in hatha yoga or being in hot yoga. I was like, dude, these are professionals, you know what I'm saying? This is like the real deal. And I could just feel it, not because, just because like that's how it was. And so I started doing a few practices every day. Like it was the only thing that I ever did like every day for like 40 days or something like that. And like, dude, so many things changed, and like I literally, like, everything just dropped off, like so many things, like the drinking and stuff. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was like in tears, like I wanted to stop, like ending up like not remembering where I was, how did I get here? I would wake up like that, and just feeling terrible, like feeling so terrible. And being an athlete, like wanting to move my career forward in jiu-jitsu, like I I couldn't stop like doing really unhealthy stuff, and so within a couple of months of like doing some serious yoga, uh, all that stuff just cut in half, at least. And so I was like, dude, there's something to this, and so, and I started to feel, above all, like I started to feel some sense of wholeness, whereas like at first it kind of translated in a weird way. Like I really stopped caring what people thought of me, A lot of people would say, I mean, I kind of stepped on a few people's toes in the beginning because, I was just like, I just didn't feel that sense of fear and insecurity. And so, but yeah, a lot of things changed for me. And then, yeah, so that's how I kind of got into it.
What's the like? Was there any like particular moment when you walked in? Like I know you said it was like, oh, this felt like a proper thing. Is there like a particular moment or an interaction with somebody along the way besides just when you Googled it that made you feel like this feels right?
Mm. Gosh, I think it was, I mean, I wish I could give like a more profound answer for this, but I think that it was the fact that when I at the end of the class they give you some, like, a sheet that tells you, okay, this and this. It's like in an order, and like whenever I saw that, I was like, wow, so much freedom in that I had been for so many years like trying to keep my fitness up, trying to keep my technique right, and trying to decide all by myself like what I should do for my own well-being and stuff like that. And so like at that moment, whenever they tell you, okay, this is just what you do, and you do it like this, and you do it every day just the same. That was like huge for me, because I was like, wow, and something in me was like, it was enough to say, I'm going to do this every day, like for at least some time until I figure out, is this for real? Can this really do something? And I think I don't know if it was a moment, or if it was like a series of moments where I just felt like, thank goodness that like I don't have to try to decide anymore what it is. This is just these techniques. They're supposed to be done in this order, uh, and yeah, let me just do that. I didn't have to try to figure it out anymore. And so that, I think, was huge.
Just having it be like straightforward and simple.
Yeah, exactly. And having somebody to guide you on every step, not just give you an overview, or not just kind of do something in a class, but then, in one class, and then afterwards, like, the only thing you can do is come back to that class. It was just like, this is yours, even though all of us in the class are learning kind of the same thing, but like, but it's yours, and this is what you have to do. And yeah, that was powerful for me.
So that was when? This is still in college, or?
Yeah, I was still in college. I mean, my college dragged out for like 8 years, so there was a lot of
A lot going on.
yeah, and But yeah, it was an awesome semester, and I wanted to like do some more advanced yoga. There was like a few different levels and everything. So I did the first thing, I kept that up. And then I was like, I want to go a little deeper. And so, yeah, I ended up going there the next summer to just stay and volunteer, and just basically like just be in a place where like it was just like a wholesome environment. And it was kind of protected. I couldn't really drink there. I couldn't really, do anything that might be, that might affect me in a negative way. There was good food, probably the best food I'd ever really had. Because, I cooked on my own. We tried to stay healthy, but we didn't know what that meant. That meant like it was still all mac and cheese and stuff, I mean, it was just like maybe a little organic mac and cheese, but it was still the same thing.
Going from Kraft to Amy's.
Yeah, basically, like going from like instead of my, Tostitos from my nachos to like, some organic or something like that. But yeah, it was like that. So yeah, man. And then,
Noticing a very prolonged theme of nachos throughout your life.
man, some things you just attach onto, man. And that was my thing as a kid. That was like my favorite thing.
It's probably because it's a triangle.
Yeah. So yeah, I after that 3 months, I came back to college, and dude, a lot of people around me were like, "Man, you left as a boy, and you seem like a man now." I mean, I'm not kidding, like mature friends of mine, like, because I always hung out with older people. I don't know what it was, but I would, like a couple of my best friends in while I was in college were some of my jujitsu friends, and like they were, over 35. I was just 20, and or 22, and they were like, married and the doctors and stuff like that. I mean, my roommate was like a neurologist, and her husband was like a successful businessman. So I always had like older friends, and so when I came out of that, people were like, "Hey, like you seem a lot different," So, yeah, yeah, definitely.
So throughout this period, was there anybody during those months that you really resonated with, or that just had a helped create a shift?
I'm trying to think.
Could even just be an interesting story.
Yeah. Well, I I think it was no, it was like a shedding, it was like shedding off people. I felt like in my life, like I kind of it's like there's upgrades, it seems like I go from one level of like society and experience and like quality of people and stuff like that to like the next level. And I felt like so many people at that time that came into my life were like healthy or healthier and wholesome and more like accomplished individuals, and like so uh I think I would say that, but actually, you know what, now that I started to think about it, the people in the martial arts, there were a couple of them, and one in particular who was a guy who kind of grew up on the first hippie commune in Tennessee. His dad was kind of a famous guy, like a famous like hippie kind of like semi-guru type guy. And they started this commune, and so whenever I went there, it was like a completely different world. It was like so much kind of pseudo evolution had happened there, like in terms of the way these people looked at the world and what they did and their little society they had created and stuff. And he influenced me so much before I got into yoga. You know, he influenced me like I just thought like, you know, he just meant a lot to me, and he was a black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt, and he taught in a completely different way. He was so cerebral in his. I mean, he was like, how do you beat a guy that's like stronger, faster, and better than you? You know, and he's like, we can do it. You know, I know you can do it. Um, but
Oh,
he
because this was jujitsu.
Yeah, I was a
Gotcha.
jujitsu guy, right? And so we visited and like we were out in nature for the first time. You know, I grew up in like kind of like I wouldn't call it like a trailer park situation, but I would call it like plasticky. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, there were some really natural like my house those last few years while my father was alive, was kind of set on a hill and overlooked some nature, and even my town was like a little natural, but we didn't experience it like that because we just lived like a modern life kind of, you know. I mean, it was just like indoors and like not really appreciating all those things. But when I went out there for the first time, um, I started to uh, experience nature in a different way. And then he was such an intelligent guy that like he really inspired me, and like so I kind of emulated him in a lot of ways. But at a certain point, like I started to understand what like maybe where they didn't transcend on some things, you know, where it kind of looped back around and they kind of got caught again. You know, they thought, you know, drugs and freedom and all this stuff and organic living was like the answer, you know. And then I started to discover through him with the kinds of relationships he held and the kinds of things that he started to get into. You know, he became a little fanatical in a lot of ways on some things, like politically, spiritually, and he started to like, you know, like create a lot of chaos around him. You know, he even got kicked out of his own home. You know, like in terms of that place. And so, to make a long story short, when I got into yoga, I felt like I broke free from that. You know, I broke free from other people's influence rather than there being somebody there to influence me. I felt like I started kind of taking cue from uh, myself, you know. And obviously like the person who taught the yoga, Sadhguru, it was his wisdom I think was there, but whatever he was talking was like churning inside of me, and so my own experience started to like kind of pull from that wisdom and like check itself against that. And I started to like find myself like um knowing things from within myself, you know, and like not following other people for the first time, you know. So yeah, man, I think it was the first time that actually people weren't influencing me, you know.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, what then? Like, what was the next phase of your life?
So as I started to get more into yoga and everything, I decided, okay, let me go to India. Let me try to go to the source, you know, where like this stuff has been happening for thousands of years and stuff. And
You'd been at the U.S. ashram for.
yeah, so I was at the center, the yoga center in the U.S. And
What was that thing like? You want to go to the source, right? Was there
yeah,
anything about you're like, okay, let's try the other one in India?
yeah. Man, I hate to ask this, but can we pause for just a second, or I have to go?
Okay. Sorry, everybody. We needed to take care of some business. I think all of us had to be pretty.
Yeah, I was just telling while we were off camera that I felt like I was starting to rush. because I was like just had to go so bad, and I was my seat started to go like this as well. So
What were we talking about? Oh, that transition phase when you decided to go to India. That's what we were.
yeah. So you know, when I came back from that 3 months, the initial stay at the U.S. Yoga Center, mm, I a lot of things had improved, you know, but then like when I got back into regular life, I had improved my situation. You know, I had actually moved in with a friend of mine, a friend of mine's mother, who was like a very wholesome family atmosphere and everything, like more so than where I was when I was a part of the art collective and kind of living with those folks and everything. They were wonderful people, but like they didn't have a sense for like, you know, trying to like get better in the ways that I was trying to get better, you know.
Just a different path.
Yeah, they were just you know, they were into like art. They want, you know, and they wanted to like I don't know, they wanted to do different things, you know. So I wanted to you know, work on myself. So I needed to kind of in a way isolate, you know, and kind of get myself into a nice family atmosphere, or not family, but at least you know, that didn't have, you know, like where I could control who I was around as such, you know. Where I was, it was kind of like everybody was in that area, and so so when I got back from the 3 months, I improved my situation, and then but things were still like there, you know. Like I found that, you know, I was still visiting, you know, my favorite pub every pretty much every day, you know, and still taking a few tokes, a couple beers and a few tokes every day, basically, you know. And you know, it wasn't nearly as bad, and I was at a point where like I felt like okay, I'm a little more in control and stuff, but like I still wanted to like I really wanted to like I don't know, once you taste a little bit of control and a little bit of balance, like it seemed like that wasn't good enough. You know, I really wanted to like fully go into this. So I kind of set it up with my college that I would go for an independent study in India. And I went to India, and uh, you know, it was one of the most unbelievable experiences of my life. I just I tasted new foods. I smelled new smells. Although I had been in Brazil before, so there was like some things were similar in terms of like the level of like accommodation and things like that. Um, Still, this was like a completely new world, you know. It was like the East, you know, rather than the West. And so I I just um I started to do some more advanced practices, and like for me, coming from a martial arts background and a kind of a fitness background and stuff, I really wanted to that I really connected with doing practices, you know. So I just did a lot of practice. You know, I would spend 8 hours a day doing the practice, um and that was on my own, you know. I would volunteer during the day, but like pretty much every day from 4 o'clock until 9 o'clock, and then the evening from 4 o'clock until 7, I was just busy doing practice. And at the time, I learned more meditation rather than the physical practices and stuff. And so I spent 5 months there, and I once I left, I kind of I kind of was in a completely different place, you know, and and in fact, to the point where it actually scared me. You know, I was so different and I didn't care about any of the same things anymore. And, you know, for me, I had just gotten into yoga and meditation, like, so that I could, like, do jujitsu better, and be more hardcore, but what I found was like I just didn't care about those things anymore, and
You don't want to be the last samurai anymore.
I didn't care to be the last samurai anymore. And you know what? It wasn't so easy to let go in a way, because like I wanted to want that. And something in me hadn't like really broke whatever identification I had with being that person. And so yeah, I tried to kind of a little bit backstep, and just kind of take a step back. And ultimately what I found was there's no going back, you know. And so I spent like 6 months outside of the ashram or the yoga center, and then I ended up kind of going back for a year to the American Center. And but in that amount of time that I spent outside after my trip to India, like I really didn't drink and I didn't smoke and I didn't you know get into any kind of really undesirable situations, and uh, so yeah, after that I kind of alternated. I would spend some time at the center and then I would go back and work for some time, because I didn't really understand exactly what I wanted to do in terms of keep making money. I wasn't fully ready to like just become a volunteer or a monk or something like that. I was just like trying to figure out how can I make money, how can I be successful. Because although many things had gone away, there was still that sense that like I want, when people see me, I want them to feel that I'm a success. Uh, so eventually, that led me to do the Hatha Yoga Teacher training with Isha Foundation in India.
There was a bit of a important step before that, right?
Oh, yeah. So I kind of the problem is that I've been a little bit avoiding talking about any of the love life situations because I, out of respect for my wife, because I don't want to talk about all those, because those things were happening in parallel to all the other steps that I was taking up until I went to India the final time in 2015, I think. And when I went this time, I had gone for Hatha Yoga Teacher training, actually. I had gone for the 2000, I was going to go for 2006 or 15 batch. For those of you who don't know, it's, 6-month training, starts in July, I think, or usually does until this COVID thing hit. But anyway, I had planned for 2015, but I went and I was doing my practice and I was feeling something so powerful inside of me that I decided, okay, forget the training for now. Let me just stick on as a resident. So I just decided, let me just live there. So as soon as I did that, some few coincidences happened, and there ended up being a lovely young lady that, it wasn't like a romantic thing. I literally kind of said a prayer one night, and I said, let somebody come along that's going to help me along this path. And within a couple of days, I got a letter from somebody I didn't know that said, hey, I don't know who you are, but I think you're the person I have to marry. And so
quite a letter.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, it was like a mutual friend we had called me up and said, I need to meet you. So I was like, okay, fine, no problem. It sounded serious. So we met up, and then, yeah, she handed me this letter. And the funny thing is, you know, I would say that mostly I was a pretty shallow kind of guy, when it came to like relationships and stuff like that. Like, I had a certain expectation or something like that, and I had to like be kind of, I would never have jumped into anything without like so many kind of, so many, you know, uh, preliminary steps, and all that kind of stuff.
The normal, like,
Yeah, like an
Western
American,
getting to know somebody
yeah,
process. Yeah.
But I just had the strength and the courage at that moment, and I was just kind of fed up with all the terrible relationships that I had had and all the mistakes I had made. And it wasn't just that I had picked the wrong people, but I had also not picked the right people. There were the right people, and I said, not this time. I'm not gonna like let something go that could potentially be something that maybe I didn't choose, but that came. And in the past, whenever something had come, I didn't have the strength, and there was too much fear in me that I couldn't take it. So I said, I'm gonna do this. And like my friend who delivered the letter was like, "Are you what? What?" Like,
Wasn't expecting that.
yeah. I mean, the girl who sent the letter, who's now my wife, thank goodness. She's a very traditional girl, and it's like it's either marriage or nothing. I mean, there's no dating. Okay, and so like that, our mutual friend had convinced her, like, okay, he's a Westerner, he's an American. Because the story goes basically like she had seen my face on Facebook and read small something that I wrote, and it just touched her so deeply, and she had this overwhelming feeling that like this is the person that I have to marry. She didn't even know I was in India, and she had written this letter before even thinking that she would ever give it to me because she thought I was in Tennessee.
Oh, just simply writing it.
Yeah, she just wrote it, and she was gonna actually like throw it in a fire and try to like let this go because it was like so strong within her. And so she ended up meeting up with our friend, and this all came out. And the friend said, give me that letter. He's here. He's in India, right now. And so then it transpired as it did after that. And so yeah, I just had a feeling in me that like, okay, not this time. I'm not gonna let something go that could like, really be something so powerful in my life. And so I just said, I'm gonna do this. Let's do this. I'm ready to get married right now.
So you just decided, right?
I just decided right there that very night. And so my friend was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. I think that's great, but she's gonna be dancing tomorrow at this in this temple and stuff. She was a dancer, and so she's like, you just come see, and after that, if you think, then we can confirm. So yeah, I went, and she looked like a goddess, and the way she danced, it was like I've seen few professional dancers, and I felt that something about the way she moved and stuff was very articulate, and like her hands were so like long and beautiful, and just yeah, something touched me, and I was just in a mode, and I just said, okay, let's do it. Yeah, I just messaged and said, let's do that. So the marriage was technically fixed before we ever met, and I met her father first. He had seen me doing some volunteering, doing some serving a few people in the dining hall, and he was touched by my devotion. So, or at least that's how he felt. And when she before she even mentioned my name, she just said, "There's a guy. He's American," and he's like, "Really? Show me the picture." I think I might know who it is. That's what her dad said. I think I might
Uh-huh.
know who he is. And she's like, Daddy, no, you don't know who this is. Like, and he's like, no, just show me the picture. I have a feeling I think I know who he is. And turns out I was the one. So somehow that was an easy pass.
Yeah. I think
So
not many people get through the Indian father like
yeah,
me.
yeah. And just so happened her sister passed by and she saw us me talking to her father, and she said, wow, they look good to get, like, I see something there, you know.
Mm.
And they come from very traditional families, so you know, every decision is like a group decision, you know, so I kind of had to um, it had to bode well with everybody, otherwise it wouldn't have worked. And so yeah, and then to make a long story short, and within a month of knowing each other or knowing about each other, we were married, and now it's been 5 years. So, and it's been an incredible journey, you know, somebody from a completely different culture who understands the world in a completely different way, and it's always a check, you know, on you and your awareness and like what, you know, how you want to be, and the respect that you want to give to your spouse and what she thinks. And so all the time, like it's like, you know, just being corrected and looking at things in a different way that I didn't understand before. And you know, her having a more evolved sense of family and understanding of relationships and what it means to carry relationships. It's transformed me in like a way that I like couldn't have imagined. You know, I'm just a completely different person. And so, you know, whatever that, somebody heard that prayer, you know, and you know, delivered the perfect person for me, um, to walk down the spiritual path. You know, I mean, to help, you know, keep me from, to help give me a sense of, to help organize me in a way that I can actually take some steps. You know, maybe it's not like we're walking together because everybody walks by themselves, you know, but I needed somebody to kind of like get me fit to do it, you know,
Mm.
and she was the person.
Helps you dance along.
What? Sorry?
Helps you dance along the way.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Mm. So then now you decided to go for the teacher training, right?
Yeah, we lived at the ashram together for a while, and then we decided, you know, like there's responsibilities. There's her parents are there at the ashram. They're all full-time volunteers. Mother, father, sister, grandmother. I mean, it's just like everybody gave up everything and came.
Mm.
And so she felt a responsibility because, like, in a way, like it was her initiative that brought them all there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like she was the one that was like, I don't care about becoming an accountant. I don't care about doing anything. I just want to go to the ashram and like work on myself and seek spirituality. And her father and her sister, or her father at least, was like, you know, well, what the heck, you know, like I'm only out here working just so that for my daughters, but like if we want to, you know, go down the spiritual path, then like what's the point? I'll also go. Let's go. So they kind of enabled each other to like do this. And
It's really something beautiful the way the family kind of functions as one, even though they're
yeah,
different people.
yeah, and it was hard to accept at first, you know, because like I'm so used to being like completely autonomous and like nobody, I mean, but I liked it, you know, at the same time. Like it was tough whenever like my decision wasn't heard because like it wasn't good and it wasn't like, you know, smart. And so it was tough like to like be told, no, that's not what you should do. And uh but you know, it feels good though to have those people and a sense of commitment that like I've never experienced in the States, you know, like with, especially with my best friend that I mentioned earlier, you know, I've always had the sense that you know, for me our friendship was everything, you know. And like But when something would go down, you would find out that like, so you don't consider me family. You don't, and I can never be part of your family because that's just not in you, you know. And I don't know if it was because I never had brothers and sisters or anything. So like I just kind of like formed those relationships with people that I cared about. Uh, it was a hard reminder every time because I think I always gravitated into like a family, like after I left my best friend and our relationship cooled off, and then I kind of met new people, and they also had a really cool family, and like I ended up they brought me right in the same way. I spent Christmas and Thanksgiving for the next few years with them, and I was like one of them, but like ultimately at the end of the day something would happen, and it wasn't anything that like was a deal breaker. It wasn't like anything that separated us, but like all of a sudden I realized, whether it was subtle or whatever, that like you don't really think of me as one of you.
Mm.
I'm just a friend. I'm not a brother, like a real brother. And I think my wife is the first person that ever made me feel like I'm actually family, you know?
Mm.
And her family, like her father especially, um, they like included me, in a way that I had never experienced before. And of course, I think there's always like a limit, if I mess up too bad or if I did something really messed up, then like, that it probably wouldn't be the same. But I think, I feel that like it's the first time I've ever had that sense of stability in my life, that I knew that person is there for me no matter what, you know?
Mm.
So that was huge. I think that was greatly empowering because there is always a sense that, I'm on my own, and when you're on your own, like, you never know, like, there's nobody that has your back, and I don't know, you can't take like whole steps, kind of. I mean, and if you do, it's like they don't feel like solid steps. They always feel like you could just this the stone could break under your foot at any moment, and like nobody would be there to catch you. But like now, I feel like somebody's there. So yeah.
It's very beautiful. um, and then you were saying she felt like needed to do something, and you guys decided the teacher training, right?
Well, we just couldn't see ourselves doing anything else, because this is something that transformed our life so much that we felt that like if we have to do something, then we need to do this. We need to like spread whatever it is that changed our lives and benefited us, because like it's somehow like that's all you can do, like whatever is that highest thing in your life, like you somehow just can't avoid, but
You have to do it.
you have to like, yeah, you have to, every conversation ends up in that, like when it on certain levels, when you're having certain kinds of deeper interactions with people, like you always kind of express whatever has been the most transformative and powerful for you. So like that, we didn't have much of a choice, that was the only good choice. And I've always been like, after being into martial arts and everything, I still wanted to like live my life in a powerful way and keep this body like super like alive and strong, and so Hatha yoga was like a perfect thing because it's like a very scientific way of like elevating yourself and your consciousness and all that, while at the same time like making your body into something that like most people consider impossible, like so yeah, so we took out the program, we came back to the States, we traveled around and taught, settled down for a while, taught in one place, and a lot of things happened. we experienced wonderful people. We made friendships that like are still to this day like some of the best, some of the deepest relationships that we've ever experienced in our life. Some of the most caring and wonderful people, even people that don't do yoga. Still we met so many wonderful people, and that itself was an eye opener. That like we didn't get pigeonholed into thinking like yoga's the only way or something like that. We met a lot of people that don't do any yoga, and they're still really great people. But they're doing some kind of yoga. They're practicing love, they're practicing compassion, whatever they're doing. They've become something, and and that's because of something that they did, whether unknowingly or unknowingly. They did some form of yoga, and they are who they are. But yeah, and so we experienced some betrayal as well. We had some people that we thought were friends, and for us being like, it's kind of seems a little maybe not great to call yourself innocent, but if I look back, I would say that I just wouldn't expect, I would never, because you kind of, I guess, you sometimes you project what you feel that you would think about a situation on somebody. Like with my wife, for instance, if she looks at me in a certain way because of a certain situation, I would be like, think about what I would be feeling, and so I project that on her. But like actually she may not be feeling that way. I may be completely misreading like her facial expression or whatever. So I think that also happens on the good side too. You when you care about somebody and you love somebody, sometimes you project like what you would be feeling about that person, and it reflects onto you, or you feel that that's the same feeling and that's coming from their end. But then we got hurt, and and maybe we deserved it. I feel that we deserve what we get, and I, I don't really, I still to this day, those people, I never spoken a bad word. I still, in my heart, still know that they're beautiful people. It's just like for some reason things didn't work out. But yeah, so we experienced like a whole range of life, like I would say I had a friend contact me from high school a few years ago. And, the way that they spoke to me, it was like it was just yesterday that like I was with them, even though it was 15, 20 years ago. And it was like, yeah, that's what I love about you. You were always like this. And I was like, I wish I remembered what you were like, I hate to be like that, but it feels like so many things have happened since then that I can't remember. It seems like so many lives ago, and so just in these past years with my wife, it feels even more intensified. Like I've lived a few different lifetimes and learned like more than I could have ever imagined. So so yeah, we took the training, we traveled, we settled down, then we decided that's no good. Let's start traveling again. And we ended up getting a call. See, my wife was the kind of person when she grew up in the yoga center. Her whole family moved there when she was 18. She started yoga when she was 12. Her whole family moved into the ashram when she was 18. And she grew up in nature. She grew up in a very rural environment, and she loved animals and wildlife. And so if some bird would hit his head on the glass or broken wings, she would always be the one. Everybody would come in the center and they would bring the bird there. And she would nurse it back to health. And so whenever we were in Omaha, and we got a call from a friend who's a yoga teacher in India, and she had visited a place in Africa and said, you know, these people need help, and the place is so wild and beautiful, and you came in my dream, like you're the person, like, can you guys go? And we had gone through some crazy situations, and but we had a good, solid, stable life. We had a nice place. We were kind of working little side jobs, doing a few entrepreneurial activities, making like some good money, and teaching. Obviously, we were teaching. And the teaching was amping up every week. We were doing really well for ourselves, but we thought, you know what, let's have some adventure, So we ended up traveling to Africa, and yeah, and so we've been in Africa for the last 2 years teaching at a school, and teaching yoga and being a part of administration. I was teaching parkour and martial arts. So many things.
Going to Africa is quite a jump.
Yeah.
Although I guess if you're already traveling, but still, like, this area where you're at, I mean, I've been to some rural areas, but even in India, if you're somewhere rural, there's still so many people all around. How is it here in this place? Because it's pretty out there, isn't it?
It is. It's like 5 hours away from the big city of Kampala. It's in the country of Uganda. And it's a beautiful place. I mean, it's all green. I mean, when you're driving there, it's like in the foothills of this huge mountain range. It's like the largest mountain range in Africa. Not the tallest mountain, but still the tallest mountains, in the plural sense. And there's lots of people, but there's not much around in terms of infrastructure, education, facilities for, or amenities, or there's just not much around. Everything at the school is, solar and rainwater catchment. We cook the food for the children in a rocket stove, which is like a barrel with a hole in it, and a grate on top. And so you put the wood in the bottom, and it cooks everything on top, on fire. Yeah, it was for us like a beautiful, like, journey into the unknown, but it had its challenges, still does, because we're still there. But ultimately, like, we understood a lot more about ourselves, because now we kind of took away a lot of the things that were kind of making our life a little cushy, I guess, or a little relaxed, and we kind of, I think, in the process discovered like what's really important for us, and like what it really means, and like, where we're trying to go, so yeah.
What would you say is like the biggest, or probably multiple, but like, how there's usually those things when you hear about some country you've never been to and you think, oh, it's like this, this, this. At least that's what I saw in a movie, or that's what someone told me, or I read in a book, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you get there and it's like, oh, it's not at all like that. So what are those things for Uganda?
Well, I can tell you this. I didn't have much of an expectation. I had no idea about what the people would be like. I had seen like Black Panther, the movie, because, obviously, like I told you, I was really into comic books as a kid and stuff. So, I mean, every Marvel movie that comes out or whatever, it's like, gotta go see it or something, which is a little ridiculous these days. So I'm thinking about how to limit that part of myself. But I didn't have much of an expectation. I thought it'd be colorful. I thought it'd be fun and bright and, simple. And, the thing is, what I realize now is that, like, Africa's big. It's so big, and there's so many different kinds of people. Like within Uganda itself, there's just so many different tribes and languages that aren't even connected, like whole different language groups even that like you cannot recognize anything from one language to the next. And so what I've experienced there has been both beautiful and tragic, you know. It's sad to see the effect of colonialization and like a deterioration of native wisdom and everything. It's really tough to see because like in the area where I'm at, it seems as though they were pulled out of something and they never were quite given somewhere to reach, They kind of were given like something that probably is like less valuable, and
Is it like being displaced in a way?
yeah, I mean it's kind of like they had a certain context in which they existed, and they had a certain maybe like purpose and a wisdom and a knowledge of medicine and they had a certain spiritual thing that they did, religion and all those kinds of things. And then basically when people came and kind of said that's not it, you know, do this other religion, and do this education, right, which is mainly, I think, uh, uh, like this thing where it's like they're training them to feel to be cogs in a machine, that isn't necessarily like doesn't have any context over there, if they were in the Western world, and then that education may be more relevant because at least they could use it for something. But over here, it's like they just kind of like erased their connection and their context in which they existed. And so they kind of, none of them remember the old ways. And, um, and, but, so in that sense, it's sad. And to see like what happens to people when they're kind of like, when they haven't been exposed, to ways of like to beautiful ways of living. They basically are just on a survival mode where and granted, this isn't everybody. If you go to Kampala, or if you or even in the villages, there'll be a few people here and there that are just really forward thinking, and it seem to be like really wonderful people and thoughtful and have a lot of integrity. But generally, what I've seen is the effect of poor education or just wrong education and a lack thereof, even of that. And so it's a beautiful place, but it has a lot of challenges. Like if you want to be there, like you just have to accept certain realities. But the beautiful thing about that is that you have an opportunity to see the best in people, because even if they let you down, you start to discover that that's not all of who they are. So for instance, if something gets stolen, or maybe if you have to continuously tell somebody to like do, like for instance, we have a lot of people on campus that are local people, and like you kind of have to guide them every step of the way on most things, just because they haven't had the exposure. But you start to kind of realize that when you're in somebody else's place, and like you're you're working with people who are less exposed or something like that, like they may not be like what you expect them to be, but like you still see them for people, like you still are forced to, like, because a lot of times you can just turn away from relationships like that. You can just like remove those people from your life, or you can just start hanging out with a different crowd or whatever if you don't like something about somebody. But then, like, the situation we're in is we have got to work with these people, and so even if they don't like live up to your expectation, that doesn't really mean anything. They still are wonderful people. It's just that they're different than what you thought they would be or what they should be. So anyway, I feel it's hard to say it in a way that's like really coherent, but for me at least. But I just feel that you learn to see the best in people and to not hold on to things that you don't prefer about them as such. Yeah.
Mm. Um, so, in terms of being in this school and helping them with all that, what would you say are like the most, how do I put it? The things which you feel you've really gleaned a really interesting lesson or had some kind of personal growth just from being there?
So I would say it was similar to the experience I had when I first entered into my family with my wife, is that, you kind of you can only like stretch your understanding to a certain point on your own. It's like you can only seems that you can only, at least for me, you can only imagine that things can be like this much different, but then the way people experience the world, or the way they look at the world, or the way they experience things, for some reason it's hard to imagine beyond a certain point that it could be so different, and so I think when we first arrived, we kind of thought that like we can just implement everything that we think would work, and so that's kind of what we try to do. And like, but we slowly started to understand that um we didn't know these people. We didn't understand what they value, what do they care about, what are their goals in life, what does it mean to be a Rotoro, or a Batoro, or whatever, whatever tribe they're from. Like, okay, well, how are the tribes different? Are some people like this, some people maybe like that. We just thought they all fit into the same understanding that we have, and so I think the most valuable lesson that I learned was like, you can't assume anything. You just can't make assumptions about, uh, you know, the values and the life, the life breath of these of people, like whatever makes their life, you can't even imagine sometimes. It's like being a parent. Once you were a child, but it seems that now you're this age, you can't even imagine what it's like to be them anymore. That's not exactly the same, but it's similar in that like you're both humans, uh, and but you've been groomed in a certain way, and so it's very difficult to kind of imagine that people could feel so differently about everything, and experience their life and in a completely different way. Um, Another thing that I learned that I think is relevant here and would be like valuable for people to understand is that like, you know, met a lot of rich people in Uganda. I sat in a billionaire's house. I thought it was a hotel. I was really thrown off. I didn't know what was going on. Like we were invited to somebody's house. I knew they were wealthy, but like we got there, I thought it was a hotel. And I was like, then I saw pictures of their family, like, and like it was like I didn't know what to think, you know. But there were a lot of assumptions that I had about rich people as well as poor people. You
Mm.
know, like I thought, okay, rich people must be exploitative because they're making lots of money and there's lots of poor people out there. You know, they must be like, you know, there must be something in them that's not right. Um, and on the other hand, I had a lot of expectations about poor people. Like, oh, they're all maybe, you know, like these are attitudes that you don't know about until they come to the forefront of your mind. Like they're just somewhere in the background.
Yeah.
So I imagined that all the poor people were like good people and deserved a chance and like, you know, just maybe weren't getting it. And um, so what I experienced was is that like, you know, I met some really wonderful, really wealthy people. And it kind of struck me that like, okay, like there's nothing wrong with being wealthy, you know, like I mean, I it's you know, and then I met some poor people who, you know, like it just they they were also exploitative, you know, they wanted to get something from everybody, you know, and instead of they didn't really want to um you know make something out of their own, you know, out of from their own effort. They didn't want to do anything with themselves. Um, so it's just been a lesson in compassion on all levels. You know, I had to learn to accept people that weren't going to be the way that I thought they were going to be. I had to learn that you know what I think about people. I had to learn first of all that I even had those attitudes that I didn't really know about until like I just got into that situation, and I had to learn that was just total BS. You know, I just had so many assumptions within me that just like don't make any sense, and so and and, and I learned that you know like one quality is not what makes a man. You know, or makes the woman. It's much more than that, and so ultimately, like what I think I learned is that like whenever I step into a new situation or whenever I get to be with new people, I just won't make those same assumptions, you know, and uh,
Mm.
and I won't carry that with me in my life, you know, that I think this is that, and you know, so it just broke me down a little bit, basically. Yeah.
Mm. One thing I found a lot of people who are in a teaching field, specifically with like kids, is that even though you're teaching them, you end up just learning a lot from them.
Mm,
So, did you find that to be true when you were teaching?
I did. Maybe I'm a little self-centered, but I felt that I learned a lot about myself rather than learning something like, you know, I mean, it was like I definitely learned from them, you know, but I think the things I had to do to kind of be a teacher taught me about myself. It wasn't like that they necessarily, I mean, I'm saying it, I don't want to like take the credit away from them because like they were the kind of catalysts. Without them, I wouldn't have had to jump in and do whatever I did, you know. But it was the act of trying to be a teacher that I think brought many things out in me uh, that were kind of revolutionary. You know, I mean, especially in terms of what my idea of myself. You know, I thought I kind of didn't really know what I was capable of. You know, and I didn't really know how I would be in a situation where I needed to do something, and people were like counting on me, and you know, I had to kind of like and what I would do when things aren't going right, you know, and whenever I just have to kind of like do my best, you know, and what it would be like to not have a really important answer for somebody, you know, like if, you know, because they come to you with those questions, and like, I'm not that well read, I'm not that well educated, you know, I mean, um, you know, and even if I was, there's going to be things that you just can't answer, you know, no matter how well read or educated you are. And, you know, I didn't know what it would be like to have to be a role model in somebody's life and be a teacher. So what I learned from them was more like cultural and more like, um, you know, it was kind of more human in that I I understood that children, no matter where they come from, can be a possibility. You know, not determined by their parentage or their or where they're coming from. Because I mean, it's just like a stark difference. You know, just a little bit of exposure had created these little beings that were like so far different. Like if you just look at the two faces between like their parents and them, if you just look at their face like in contrast, like you can just see that the child had so much more sophistication in their face, the way they expressed themselves, the look, the ponderance on their in their expression was like much more advanced than just looking at their parents or something that who had not had an education or any exposure.
Mm.
So what I learned from them was like human, and like fundamental. Um, it but what I learned through the act of just trying to jump in there and be something for them was like much more, in that like I discovered who I am, you know, um, in situations that I had never been in before, you know. So
Mm.
so like that, yeah.
So that kind of catches us up to, what you're up to right now, because you still have a little bit more time at the school, right?
Yep. You know, the school has gone through a change. You know, there's been an effort to try to kind of restructure the school in such a way that uh, it can more readily sequester its resources, in terms of finance, in terms of, I don't want to refer to people as resources, but in terms of, you know, talented, educated individuals in the local and, you know, kind of neighboring areas that need a platform to launch themselves from. So in terms of teachers, in terms of administrators, all those things, uh, you know, the school was being held up by a couple of people's know-how, and um, what there's been an effort to do is kind of like change that in a way where um, it kind of is self-fulfilling, you know, it kind of generates the kind of people and interest and resources that it needs. And so once those things are in order, and once few people that are really needed come into the picture, then I think it'll probably be time for us to go. Yeah.
Mm. So at this point, we usually look at, because we're starting to transition into like future.
Mm.
So when we look at the future, it's limitless possibilities, right? And so just like that, I leave this where we go in this part of the podcast more up to you. We can look at many things, like, are there, going through all the things you've been through up to this point, are there problems you feel really need to be focused on a bit more by um, people in either areas you've lived or areas you visited or things like that? Or Maybe instead, do you want to just look at painting a picture of what you would like the future to look like? For both. It's up to you.
Well, you know, man, I think if I've learned one thing in the last few years, it's that I don't know much about the political and socioeconomic situations that are happening. And but I think there's something more like elemental. I mean, in the world that kind of I hope to see happen, and which I'm kind of trying to uh, make happen as much as possible, is that well, it's hard to be honest with you. I draw a blank because I hate to say this, but maybe I'm just too selfish, because like I really can't see anything outside of just working on myself. I really have no idea what needs to happen in the world. I just want to be a light, and like I just want to walk free from suffering within myself. I don't want to be touched by all the unpleasantness, and that's happening. And so what I feel in the future is just I want to just see how I can become everything that I know needs to happen, you know, uh, and on a very simplistic level, it's just that all that I know needs to happen is that like I need to break down all the barriers within myself that separates me from you, or me from my other brother, or the rest of my family on this planet, which is every other human being and every other animal and every other living creature, plant, animal, or otherwise, and because I think that what's happening that I've seen that's so disturbing is that there's just, if it's not racism, it's tribalism. The same race can just hate the other people that look just like them but live, in a different place or something like that. I've just seen like barriers that people build in their minds that separate us from everything else. And as Sadhguru has said, or many other great yogis and masters and intuitive individuals have expressed that, there's no us and them or us and the environment or anything. There's just ecology. There's just one system that flows into the next system. And we keep stunting our um our we keep stunting our growth and our I'm trying to find the word, but our ability to just live in a mm,
Stunting our own progress.
yeah, progress, but I would say just our own gosh, there's one word there that I'm trying to grasp, but it's just we're maybe fruitfulness, or our uh, I really can't think of what it is, but we're 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 not living to we're not being what we could be, and I'm kind of a Lord of the Rings fanatic, like for so many years. And so like when I look at it, I'm like, you know, the elves, we could be the elves, like we could that's us actually. That's like the higher form of us, like we could figure this out. We could learn how to um live on this planet in a beautiful way. But I think the first thing is we have to stop seeing separation between us and everything else. So that's just what I think the future is all about for me. My hunger for it and my determination, and I might even go as far to say desperation to experience it and feel it, because I've touched it for moments, and uh, it's it's not stayed with me, and it frustrates me more and more every time, and I think I want to become that answer, and I think that if that can happen, then it may just the whatever fragrance of that will just hopefully inspire others, but I can't think about that honestly. Um I can't take that on my head, and I can't. I feel that I'm done with altruism. I'm not doing this for anybody else, but I'm doing it for myself, and I hope that it ultimately it's worth it for everyone. You know, whatever selfishness I have to delve into to make it happen. Maybe maybe nobody will remember that when the product is finished. Whenever. So yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And as far as maybe just generally, because you've probably traveled more than some, less than others, but quite a bit more than a lot of people that never really leave the general area they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So inevitably, that gives you a little bit more sight into what's going on. I noticed that for myself anyway. When I went to Peru or India or different places, you just see things that help give you a little more clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, simply off of what you've seen, knowing that we can't know hardly anything, what do you feel you see coming in the next 5 years, just based off that limited information?
Okay. Well, I think that in the name of convenience, things may suddenly become very inconvenient, and I feel that I've seen um, I've seen that you know I've seen that
You don't have to be right. It's okay.
yeah, I know. I'm just I think it's hard to kind of put it into it's hard for me to kind of like say it in a way, because there's always this side of me of going like there's something I'm not seeing, and so when I say that, this is what I've seen, I'm kind of like thinking that I've seen enough to know that like there's a whole lot out there that if I say something, it's kind of only like looking at one side, so I can't really. It's hard for me to actually express it, but what I can say is that like within the cities and within the you know the hearts of people, seen both equally. I've seen there's people have been empowered and things have become convenient, but like it seems that like life still fills itself up, in a way that it doesn't really matter, like days still become too long, and people still become overworked, and it's like I just think to be honest with you, I don't know what to say, man. I really don't know. I really just
Okay.
don't know. Sorry.
Perfectly acceptable answer.
Yeah.
What about for yourself? Is there anything you'd like to see in the next 5 years, or that you're working toward?
Mm,
And it's okay to say I don't know.
yeah. So wait, I'm sorry, because I think maybe I got a little lost. The previous question was, what would you like to see happen in the next 5 years? Or what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. What do you?
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, maybe if I take it from a little bit of a different angle, or a little bit, if I bring it down a level, I can kind of see that I think in the next 5 years, there's going to be like a an investment on so many different levels, not just monetary or whatever, but on innovation, because I think we've been put into an interesting situation, and now so many people have had to they've had to like figure out things, they've had to like learn how to do things in a different way so that they could survive. And so out of this kind of hardship, I think like there's going to be so much innovation, and I think it's like an exponential thing where it's like we make a little progress, and then we think, wow, well, now we could actually do this much more. And the way that technology is going and everything, I think that we could see things in the next few years that like we really didn't imagine, and that we would have probably taken a lot more time had the world not had things not happened the way it did this past year, with the pandemic and all those things. So I think it's gonna be like kind of like I see it kind of being like a rubber band effect. People are gonna feel this like breaking out whenever things kind of settle down, and things are gonna just kind of explode, and I just hope that it explodes in the right way, because otherwise if the environment deteriorates more, and if we just use up more natural resources, and if we just go crazy, then I don't think that's going to be great. But I think that there's enough technologies and effort going in the right direction that something amazing might happen in the next few years. But as far as myself, I think that I'm at like a point right now where it's like I've really understood that I want to make a few steps in my life. So I think the next few years are going to be challenging, in that I'm going to have to kind of like address those few things that I've ignored within myself, and I'm going to have to kind of expose a part of myself that like I've been kind of keeping hidden, not necessarily hidden, but just like I'm gonna have to like kind of there's always like seems like a limit, when you're wanting to look within yourself, like there's like, okay, and you just kind of accept it as like, okay, that's it. I won't go beyond that, because it would disturb my fundamental understanding of myself too much. And I'm saying this on like a very deep level, not like anything like crazy or anything, but it's just that like within myself, like I think I'm gonna have to kind of go to the next level on looking at things and really accepting that, like, okay, like this is what I'm gonna have to do if I want to take a step. Like I'm gonna have to get more disciplined, or I'm gonna have to basically give up something that I really love. Like for instance, like I was saying, like Marvel movies, entertainment as such. It's like I know somewhere in me that like entertainment, there's like a choice, and that choice is either entertainment or going through the boredom and coming out the other side and and experiencing something that's far beyond what I'm distracting myself with. So like that, I think that in the next few years I'm going to come up against a few important decisions where it's going to be like, listen, I don't care about watching that movie or whatever. Like I need to do something else that's more productive, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it, and I think that unfortunately I don't know if I can do it on my own. I'm gonna need help, and so I see myself seeking out the right situations and the right people that can give me the space that I need and give me a safe enough environment that I can kind of turn away from a few things that I think are going to be, honestly, are going to be the last barriers on many levels. And after that, I'm not saying that I'll have a reach somewhere, but I will definitely have a clear path where if I just keep going and I just keep my head down, just keep running, that I might find myself in a different place in the next few years.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll end on a light note with a few rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Just like first thing that comes to your head, right? First one, super important. Favorite ice cream?
Oh my God, pistachio.
Pistachio, really?
Pistachio,
Hey,
yeah.
it's the pistachio.
I mean, if you just have to like cut out anything, like, I was thinking funky stuff like peanut butter cup or something like that. But if I just had to go for like straight kind of like flavor, definitely pistachio.
Pistachio.
Yeah.
Your favorite like physical activity when you just need to like work out some energy?
Oh, favorite physical activity. Okay. I really like frisbee.
Okay.
I like capoeira. uh, if I have to I like to just, go out and run around, like kind of. It's like I like to do little obstacle courses like in my little area, like wherever it might be, whether it's in my house or whatever. I like to just move. Like it's just basically moving, like I like to just crawl, climb, jump, whatever it is, like but I wouldn't say there's any like specific thing that I like to do like that. Yeah.
What is the like something really quirky about you that people will probably never know otherwise?
Huh. Gosh. That's a tough question.
Oh, what would your wife say?
What would my wife say? Um,
We'll quiz her later and see.
yeah. I think what people I think I'm actually a perfectionist. But you would never know it by looking at like my habitation or anything. It's like it seems to kind of keep its focus itself only in certain places, and so like my wife would normally call me out on my entire lifestyle, but then there's just funny little spots where it's like the only thing she's not seeing is that one thing that really bothers me,
Mm.
like so like that. I'm like loose on so many things, but then there's a few things that, like, if they're not perfect, like, it just won't work.
It just works. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I wish I could come up with something better, but I think I'm much less quirky than I used to be, and I think that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about an old quirk?
An old quirk. Ooh, man.
When you were a younger man.
Well, gosh. I think that now we've already gone out of rapid fire territory. I've already lost.
Where's the rapid?
Yeah, pass. Yeah,
Pass.
I can't think of it
fine.
now.
Pass. How
Next
about
one.
do you have any like fun short stories from like school when you were a kid?
Fun short stories from when I was a kid at school. God. Oh man. Honestly, not that I can think of right now. I wish I did.
Any latest funny story that happened?
Any latest funny story that
Yeah.
happened to me? And there's few things that I usually, would retell, but now I'm just drawing a blank.
Okay. Well, end with a
Sorry.
joke. You had all these like lame jokes.
Okay, good joke. Let's
It could
see.
even be a good lame joke. It's fine.
Okay, so a pair of jumper cables, walks into the bar. Bartender says, "Hey, don't you go starting anything." Okay, a
Oh,
lot of
God.
people wouldn't get it. Anyway, a skeleton walks into the bar, asks for a beer and a mop.
Okay.
That's the end of the joke. Okay. Okay, anyway. All right.
All right. Okay. Yogesh, I am very glad to have had you on. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
This
thank
has
you.
been I love doing these podcasts because there's just so many parts of people that you meet and you just never really get to know them deeper because you either weren't there or it just doesn't come up or whatever. So these are really special to me, and I'm really grateful that you came on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Me too. Thank you.
And that's it, everybody. So, do you have anything like to plug, like the school or anything, in case people want to know more?
Yeah, so if you're thinking about trying to find some peace of mind and balance and all those things that maybe have been unreachable up until now, I would definitely suggest looking up Isha Hatha Yoga or Isha Yoga, Inner Engineering, Sadhguru, any of those things on YouTube, and you might find some things that you had always been feeling but never really had any words put to it, and it might help you like it helped me, and I really hope that it does. If you are cruising the internet and you want to figure out a way of lending a hand or doing something that having an adventure that maybe you have always been wanting to have but never could decide what it should be, then you can look up Sadhguru School. It's in Uganda, and we always need talented, passionate individuals that, might be willing to come and help us, bring some knowledge to some people that really need it. And, so yeah, that's it. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And thank you for listening. I get a lot out of this, but I hope you do too. This is it's just fun, and I'll see you in the next one.